We're going to talk today all about how you can lead your strategy so that your CEO doesn't start listening to somebody else and their ideas. Now, whether this is your CEO or whether this is other leaders in the organization, this is still relevant for you, especially if you are a woman in leadership. So, if you've ever experienced this, and I've had a client of mine that we've been working with together, and this one's gone crooked, is where her CEO walks into the room, into her office, and he's all fired up because he's just been out on the golf course and talking with an acquaintance maybe in another industry, or just someone that's like, hey, great golf buddies. And he's like, this is a fantastic idea. We need to bring this into our organization. We need to do this here. And you're sitting there going like, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't work inside the type of organization that we have. We've already talked about this, or even just a thought like, I have got a whole strategic roadmap ready to go. I'm working on it that suits the organization, that's going to drive us to the outcomes and towards the results that we as a company have set. But instead of being seen as the expert, as the strategic voice for your department, to really be able to say like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to set the strategic roadmap for my organization's responsibility, whether that's in the sales, whether that's in HR, whether that's in operations. It's not landing. You're always the one having to explain back to your leaders or your CEO going like, oh, this is really why it doesn't really work, or you have to push back, or sometimes you're just bypassed entirely and something gets implemented or something gets rolled out. You're like, well, hold on a minute. This does not fit with what we're trying to achieve within this department that is going to lead to this outcome for the company. So if that's you, then this message is for you. Hi, I'm Kim, but I'm Kim Reimakers, and I work with senior women leaders and ensuring that they get their voices heard, that they have the authority that they need to lead, but also going from being the doer in the dark, being invisible and overlooked, to being a visible and trusted voice at the decision-making table. So let's dive into this topic today, because as I was saying, one of my clients was coming to me, this was like, you know what? My leader just doesn't see me as someone with the knowledge and the expertise, does not recognize the fact that I have the expertise and the knowledge to do this, but comes in every time with their own ideas. And I have to keep bursting the bubble a little bit. And it's leading to friction. And it's just on both sides, not really feeling like this is a great thing. So here's one of the biggest breakthroughs and the biggest lesson that she walked away with is that as we were sharing, I'm like, you're doing all of this in the dark. Like you're doing all of the work, but you're not taking anybody else along on the journey. And for her, it was a realization of like, oh my God, you're right. I have been I'm like working on my presentation for my strategy. Things I need to have different resources and things need to shift. But I haven't been sharing it with my management team. I haven't been sharing it with the CEO. So he has no idea what I'm doing. And I was like, well, if you're not sharing it, but he sees a gap and he knows something needs to be fixed. There's a problem here, but it's, he can't, you're not providing the solution. And then he is going to turn to others for ideas rather than coming back to you going, okay, here, I keep seeing this problem. How are we going to do that? So if you've ever find yourself saying, well, I'm doing the work, but no one is seeing the impact that I'm having, or you're the one that's always tired of being the one that has to push back because it feels like you're more of an obstacle, when in reality, it's like, no, you really want to keep the organization, your department, and your company overall on the right path. And you're thinking like, but my insights aren't landing because I said it. But if somebody else was to say it, like all of a sudden it's the most brilliant idea ever, then you're likely stuck in that silent strategy trap, right? You're doing all the work, you're hustling really hard, but no one is seeing it. So here's what I want to give you today for what you can do, Because one of the biggest things that I found, and similar with this client, was that waiting until it's the right time in order to share what you're doing. And often it can look in different ways, right? Sometimes waiting for that right time is like, yeah, but our meeting hasn't been scheduled yet. It's not happening until like next month. So I'll just keep working in the dark here, keep tweaking my presentation. Sometimes it's just the fact of like, hey, I don't have, my strategy isn't 100% completely worked out yet. So I don't know all the steps, or I don't know everything that I want to do. Okay. But here's the thing. Sometimes we need to let go of it needs to be 100% there, 100% perfect. It just needs to be 60 or 70% there. Give them some direction so that they know it's like, okay, this is where we're going to head in. And that they can start to trust that you've got this. You've got the expertise, you've got the knowledge, you've got the experience to be able to pull people in that direction and to really set out the strategy that is going to meet the needs of the organization. So it's not just you as like a department on its own, working really hard, how like the wheels are moving in your department, but they're not connected to anything else inside the rest of the organization. So here's where I want these 3 things I want you to think about. First, of course, it's like you want to start showing your thinking before you show up at the meeting. So for example, rather than waiting for your next one-on-one, or rather than waiting for the next management team meeting, start sharing your strategic plan with them over coffee, or seek them out and say like, here's what I'm thinking about our goals when I'm looking ahead to Q3, Q4. I wanted to give you a preview of this so that when we meet and I give you everything, we can really start, hit the ground running. Because this way, if you're already starting to take people along, it's going to be so much easier when you actually get to that meeting to discuss your strategy or show off your roadmap. And this could be in a couple of different ways too. Another way that's really that works really effectively is like, hey, here's my ideas that I have already for my strategic roadmap or my plans for the next quarter. I'd love it if I could just spar with you for 10 minutes to see if there are other risks here that I haven't identified yet. Or I want to spar with you to see if there's other areas or other colleagues or other departments I need to bring in so that we could make this a more comprehensive organizational wide type of strategy. So again, you want to lay the groundwork, lay the foundation before you get to that official moment of sharing your strategy or sharing your roadmap. You want to have, and of course, I remember in project management, a lot of this has to do with your stakeholder mapping. Of course, please do that. So when you might be finding yourself doing this all on your own, because you're like, I can do this way faster if I do this on my own because I've got all the expertise. But then you find yourself slowing down because you haven't taken anybody else with you on that journey. Not to mention, again, you have to keep stopping other people from bringing all kinds of ideas or finding their information elsewhere. And it's going to it slows you down, takes you more time, and it really gets frustrating for everybody involved. So don't wait until that official moment for you to start talking about and sharing how do you look towards the future? How are you going to lay out your strategic plan? What are the elements of that? And here's the second piece. And this can be, sometimes it just seems like it should be so obvious, but please be very consistent and very concise in connecting what your insights, what your strategy proposal is, what your plan is, even when you're sharing even tasks that you've completed, but link them to business drivers. And most importantly, don't have to be asked for it. Because if you're only sharing, for example, hey, this is what we've done this week. Great. Fantastic. That really frames you as the doer, because that means the person that's receiving that, so if you're talking to your CEO or you're talking to other senior leaders, it means they have to do the thinking of like, okay, so you've completed those tasks, you've gotten these results, which means this and this and this is now possible, or it's led to that and that priority. You don't want to leave that work up to somebody else. You really want to already position yourself as that strategic partner by showing that you know the tasks that you've completed are leading to this result, or that you're saying like, here's my strategic proposal, and that is going to link to these business results. So, for example, you could be having, this is much more of an HR example, but you could be saying like, I'm understaffed and I need more resources. Okay, great. If you ask yourself, how often have you probably heard this from your own team of like, okay, well, I've got too much to do, I need more time. Like it isn't really something they're like, yes, okay, great. You're just looking like, oh, okay, here's another problem I've got to solve. Or what you could be doing is like, hey, based on the current ratio that we have, and if I look at the benchmarks of the industry of this, to meet the service level that we want for a company of our size, we're operating at 80% capacity. We're operating at 95% capacity. We're operating at 60% capacity, which directly impacts our ability to retain our employees. It directly relates to customer satisfaction because we may or may not have the right people in the right positions. And here's what's at risk if we don't act and what we can gain when we do. Now, do you see the difference of like how you've been able to position not just what you have, like what you've been doing, but also positioning your ask as part of the bigger question of here's where the strategic goals we are going towards. This is what we want to achieve. And this is a risk that we need to address, or we need to accept the consequences, or we decide to invest and we can gain the advantage that I'm sharing with you. And of course, this can happen in all kinds of situations. One of my clients, Jill, she is working in software consulting. And of course, she had a great team, was doing all kinds of work. But all she was sharing with her leaders was, I've done this task, but I'm still struggling here. I'm doing this task, but I'm still struggling here. Well, that really didn't highlight the expertise and the leadership that she was doing. So when you can shift that into saying, hey, my team is really performing these tasks, it's leading to these objectives. Yes, we're meeting the quality demands. We are short-staffed. And because we are short-staffed, it's leading to these and these pain points, which is going to cause X, Y, and Z results at the client. This is how our clients are going to really experience the fact that we can't deliver on the timelines because we are short-staffed. And this is what I need as a resource or additional resources, which is going to lead to, again, ABC. So what you've now done is you're really positioning what you're asking as business critical versus, hey, it's going to make my work easier. Okay. So that is a really big shift that you can make. That's going to move you from being seen as that doer of you're doing all the work, you're a great implementer, but we're not sure if you're a really strategic leader material. We're not sure if we can trust you that if we come with a question, with a problem, that you can do the answer. Here's the third way I want to share with you today is I want you to frame the strategy in a way that's going to get picked up and repeated by your leadership. So you don't want to pitch it as your department strategy. You don't want to pitch it as here's my IT strategy or here's my HR strategy. You want to pitch it more as like, here's a roadmap that will support where the entire company, where this company is headed. These initiatives are going to reduce operational drag, increase stakeholder trust. They're going to increase our time to market, or no, not increase. They're going to reduce our time to market. They're going to strengthen our ability to scale our solutions and meet customer demand. Wow. When you start positioning it that way, all of a sudden your strategy doesn't seem like a nice idea she just thought up of and it would really help her. But this sounds like, hey, this is essential. We really need to take this seriously because this could have really great impact and really great outcomes for the company in meeting its strategic goals and outcomes. And then when you find your CEO sharing this in the next meeting using your language, you know that you started to become that strategic partner that everybody else is going to want at the table. This is how you start to shift from being the implementer to being a strategic partner. From being seen as maybe you're a little difficult, out of touch, or I don't really know what you're doing, to being trusted as the first person that they call of like, hey, I heard this idea on the golf course, but I really it doesn't really match our strategy. Or maybe it's like, hey, I just wanted to throw it out there, but I really want you, I want you to tell me what it is that the next step that we need to do. Right. So rather than it always having to be like, oh no, I'm going to take somebody else's opinion, they're going to come to you for your insight first. Now, if this is something that you're looking to achieve, because I know what it is like, I've been in corporate for 20 plus years myself in all kinds of leadership positions. It can get extremely frustrating when you're like, I know what I'm doing. Please trust me to do it and give me the space to do it. But here's the thing. One of the mistakes I made, and even my clients are making at times, is that they are finding themselves waiting for permission or waiting for someone else to give them that space in order to act, rather than being very structured and very methodic in the way that they are positioning themselves to increase their visibility, to increase their respect that they get, and also to increase the recognition, which all of that is going to help elevate you to being a strategic partner. And once you have that, because that is the key, once you get to be seen as that strategic partner, what happens is the doors are going to open for new opportunities for your career growth. Hey, I've had a client that was successfully was promoted in 3 levels up to a head of department within 6 months of joining the organization, because of how she very methodically, very strategically positioned herself in her new organization. If this is something that you're really interested in, and this is you're like, oh man, Kim, like I can recognize that, where my boss is coming in with somebody else's ideas that he heard at lunch or she heard at lunch, and really she's not listening to me, or my insights, my ideas don't seem to land until Joe from accounting says it later on in the meeting, and it's like, what happened? Then I want you to DM me strategic, or you can even drop it in the comments, and I'm going to show you what the shift is that a lot of the women, or actually all of the women inside the Leadership Accelerator have made, that gets them recognized for their thinking and the leadership they already were delivering, but wasn't being recognized for it. So again, inside the Leadership Accelerator, I help senior women leaders shift from being the doer in the dark to being visible, trusted voices at the decision-making table. Let's make sure that the strategy you've already got on your head, that you've probably already worked out on a PowerPoint slide with 10 points on a slide, that it actually gets seen and it gets acted on and executed on, rather than just collecting dust in your file box on your computer. If that sounds like that's something that you're interested in, of course, again, DM me the word strategic. I'd love to hear from you and have a conversation. And of course, you can always ask me any other questions in the DMs as well. I'm happy to answer those as well.